a proven consensus builder, an accomplished lawyer, a distinguished jurist, one of the nation's most prestigious courts. My nominee for the United States Supreme Court is Judge Ketanji Jackson.
All right, that was the president nominating his first nominee for the Supreme Court. The country is bracing for a new fight over the court. We remember the past ones under President Trump were quite brutal. The president officially nominated D.C. Appeals Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to replace Justice Stephen Breyer when he retires in this summer. Liberal groups had been pushing heavily for Jackson, who would be the first black woman on the court, if confirmed, fulfilling the president's promise. Some of Jackson's notable decisions, including ruling 2019 that former White House counsel Don McGahn didn't have absolute immunity from having to testify in a congressional investigation of the president. Then Jackson temporarily blocked a Trump administration policy that allowed government to quickly deport illegal immigrants and signed an opinion that now President Trump must release documents to the January 6th committee. We're also getting a sense of how the battle lines will go down. Some in the media are already slamming the motivations of anyone planning to criticize Jackson or her judicial philosophy. Take a listen.
She is qualified, and the attacks that are going to come from the right are based on race.
Well, it says here that she may have 80 senators who, if they didn't have to publicly say that they were supporting her, would support her. But the politics these days, particularly of how things are going on the right side of the aisle, I think will limit it.
With that, Ian Samuel, former law clerk for the late Justice Antonin Scalia, Mae Davis, former legal advisor to President Trump. Ian, I see you're shaking your head. Hey, she got 3 Republican votes a couple of months ago in her confirmation hearing for the D.C. Circuit. Is Chuck Todd onto something that she's relatively a moderate and a lot of senators probably would support her if they didn't have to do so publicly?
Well, I think that, look, Justice Scalia, my old boss, he got something like 97 or 98 votes. Justice Ginsburg, of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was confirmed something with like 90-plus votes. And I don't think anyone would really describe them as moderates. That's not what's going on. It's that the distinction between constitutional law and partisan politics has simply been destroyed. And we have not had a justice confirmed by the Senate of the opposite party of the president since Justice Thomas. That's true. That was in the early 90s. And I don't think we ever will again, because this has become just it is a tool of the political program of the two parties. And that's, it's not personal and it's not about moderation. It's just business.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one of the toughest questioners of then Justice Thomas was Joe Biden when he was on judiciary. All right, May, you've obviously spent a lot of time studying this. Does the court really change when Judge Jackson then becomes Justice Jackson?
Well, this change is going to be less than others because it is one liberal justice leaving and, another liberal justice assuming that they can get one confirmed, whether it's Ketanji Brown Jackson or somebody else. And that's, I think, why the left was so upset about Justice Ginsburg leaving the seat to a conservative. So do I see a lot of change? People liked Justice Breyer. He provided some entertainment. He asked these very long-winded, sort of funny questions, and there will be a debate later. But certainly, I think we know where the votes are going to be here.
Yeah, no, it seems that way. One of the swing votes in this, interestingly enough, was Lindsey Graham, one of the more conservative members of the Senate, but on judiciary and sort of seen as this believer in, Ian, what you said was a long-lost art of this nonpartisan court. This is what he wrote. The radical left has won President Biden over yet again. I expect a respectful but interesting hearing. The Harvard-Yale train to the Supreme Court continues to run unabated. He had widely been seen as, at least behind the scenes, pushing for J. Michelle Childs, who would have been the first Supreme Court justice, not only who was an African-American woman, but who didn't go to either Harvard or Yale in something like 60 years. Are we going to ever get a normal person who isn't as smart as the two of you on the Supreme Court?
Well, listen. Remember, Amy Coney Barrett did go to Notre Dame, so that was finally,
it broke the Ivy lock, but Yeah.
Broke the Ivy lock. And, of course, Justice Ginsburg technically graduated from Columbia. Technically, and Princeton doesn't have a law school. So I think that, I thought Judge Childs had a reasonable chance of being nominated, in part because of her connection to Lindsey Graham. But the truth is, it's not just that Judge Jackson went to Harvard for undergraduate and Harvard for law school. She was a law clerk for Justice Breyer. And you know who else? The Chief Justice of the United States was a law clerk for the previous Chief Justice of the United States. Justice Kagan was a law clerk on the Supreme Court. Justice Breyer was a law clerk on the Supreme Court. Actually, come to think of it, we have two former law clerks for Justice Kennedy on the Supreme Court and a former law clerk for Justice Scalia. This is an aristocracy. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great word for it.
Role in American life.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. If you want to talk about diversity in terms of diversity of experience of where you go to high school and college and law school and your path, there's not a lot of diversity there. I think Ian made a good point in terms of how this vote likely breaks down. Senate vote tally for Jackson nomination to D.C. Circuit Court 53-44. Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Republicans who voted yes. We heard that from the View host, Sunny Hostin, that if you attack her, it's going to be because of race. Is there any other fair reasons in your mind to attack her as something other than just a liberal justice?
Well, I think you could certainly look at the number of times that she's been overturned, which is substantial. And, it's funny. Are we supposed to look at this candidate as the best candidate, or are we supposed to look at this candidate on the basis of race? Because if every time we say something, you say it's on the basis of race, then it's sort of confirming that. And there are plenty of qualified minority women, minority men that they could have chosen on the left, or they could have just said, look, if you want, a number that's emblematic of America, we actually have a Black Supreme Court justice. Isn't that great? But instead, this isn't really, this is using race.
Yeah, you actually probably made the best point, is that you said how many times she's been overturned. There's probably a lot of Democratic senators who would view that as a badge of honor and a reason to confirm her rather than not. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.